so I want you guys to do an activity. We have to remember that the values that we inherited at the moment of conception, the state of mind that your parents were in that then led you to believe what you believe, is what you build your entire life narrative on. So I'm going to give you an example in my own life. When I wanted to get divorced, I was 30 years old, and I was taught that you do not have stepfathers for your children, because stepfathers would abuse your little girls. So I actually had a client like this the other day, and similar upbringing. And I asked her, I said, so were you taught that, a step-parent would abuse your child? And she had 2 boys and a little girl. And she's like, yes. And I said, okay, is it true? Do you know every single case where stepfathers abuse their daughters? And she's like, no, that's not true. And I said, okay, and are there cases where biological fathers abuse their daughters? And she's like, yes. We have to get in the habit of questioning the values that we were given. So she would not leave her current marriage, even though she was unhappy, because of this value system. So having had a similar value system, I also had to question if I had permission. And this is the big deal with illness. Illness gives us permission to do things that we would not otherwise do. I've mentioned before, when your life goes to shit, when things are crumbling around you, this is your way of asking permission to stop, to change, to take a different direction. And sometimes illness is the only way that we get permission, okay? My therapist jokes because she says I never use the cancer card. I was like, nope, I'm going to heal it my own way. Nobody attend to me. And now I'm like, damn it, I should have used that cancer card. And I'll go into her office and she'll hand me the cancer card and she'll be like, use it. So when we have illness, it's not for us to show up as, fierce warriors. It's not for us to show up that we're, incapable. It is an opportunity that the psyche is giving us, that the universe is giving us, so that we get permission to change course that we otherwise would not know how to do. Okay? So when this client comes, we had to question the values, whether or not these things are true. I've mentioned Byron Katie before, absolutely love her, great book, Accepting What Is. And she has a website, and she has a 4-step system. And what she has you do is question what you're saying. Is what you're saying true? Is it 100% true? Who would you be without that thought? We have to get into the habit of asking ourselves and questioning the values that were given to us at conception. Most of us think that we are living and working with our free will. Very, very little. Most of us are dictated by the subconscious that at the moment of conception was given to us. So, what values are you not in alignment with in your true belief system that would cause a certain illness? Another cause of illness is for you to have to force and question your value system. So, similar to this client that I share, I had that value system. So I left my spouse, I'm guilty, I separated my family, I come from, these parents that had been married for over 50 years. Like, of course, I was destroying the family value system. And then I had to be punished, of course, for that with a cancer. Of course, this is all my own crazy thinking. None of this is true in this sense. I don't have to be punished for anything. I was asking for permission to change the course of action because I had never been granted permission to really get divorced, to really choose a different life than the one that had been sort of, established in the culture and in the family and in the religion. So oftentimes we have to question, what values do we have or have we been given rather than the ones that we truly believe? So I want you to work on an assignment. I want you to write down values that you were given as a child. You can have values associated with money. You can have values associated with family. You can have values associated with marriage. You can have values associated with education, with religion. And I want you to write out the values that you were given in your home. Now, they may not have been given to you as the values of this family are, but something that you heard repeatedly. For instance, I had to go to school. Everyone was going to college. There was no option. This was something that was a value that was in our family. It's a big one. So one of the things I had to do was establish that I had gone a little overboard with seeking education because I wanted to honor that value system. It happens to be one that I believe in. I do believe that education is an important value. So it doesn't cause any sort of problem or illness, but we have to start questioning if the values in our family, what we were passed down, society as well, but we're going to focus a little bit on the family first, can cause a rift in our belief system. And then I want you to link it to the illness that you're working on. The illness can be a pain or a numbness in your hands. Numbness in your hands or any sort of conductory issue is usually communication. For instance, I went to the hospital several months ago and there was a very uncomfortable conversation that I had to have with somebody. And I knew it and I didn't want to have it. I ended up in the hospital and I was diagnosed with some disease of that the messages from the spinal nerves weren't reaching and all of my hands were numb and so forth. The minute I had the conversation, the pain went away. I have no such disease. So when we can understand that, these illnesses are coming up to give us the message so that we can address the issue in our life. Now, everything is not that simple. That was not like a major illness. That was just something that was saying, communicate, communicate. So I want you to find something in your life, some illness, whether it's migraines, for instance. Are you trying to think, as I mentioned yesterday, think, solve a problem logically, problem solve with numbers, for instance, when really you need to solve it with your heart. If you have any bone issues, things related to the bones, things related to the structure of the body have to do with our self-worth and our validation. If we break bones or if we deteriorate, as I mentioned, like with osteoporosis, there's a self-worth issue. The earth element in our body, like the bones, like the clay, what holds us up, has to do with the structure. And if our structure has to be deteriorated, it's because there's something very key in our value system that is no longer holding us up. I get this a lot with clients that get osteoporosis. I had this amazing client many years ago who had bone cancer for 4 years. You don't get bone cancer for 4 years. She walked into the office, she was like on these little like crutches, and we talked about this, and as we, interrogated the information that came up, I said, you had a problem with your father that he disapproved of a choice that you made. And as a result, you get bone cancer. Cancer being separated from, and bone being the structure of her particular family, because they had very strong Orthodox religious beliefs, was the father, the patriarch. And she said, yes, I married someone out of my religion, out of my ethnicity, and my father stopped talking to me for several years. So we can see that when we violate values that we think are, super important, crucial, to be accepted into the family, and we identify them to not be our true beliefs anymore, an illness could be the way that then the person can start a dialogue with the family that perhaps they've, accosted with their decisions, or it's a way to then them change their life. a client just a few days ago, and I start feeling like very hypoglycemic. I thought I was going to faint in the middle of the session. Hypoglycemia has to do with disgust, self-disgust. And I said to her, do you feel disgusted with yourself? Do you feel that you're in this state of constant disgust, that you are the focal point of your wrath? And she said yes, and she broke down, and then we started discussing her childhood and how basically she was, given over to the neighbors because the parents couldn't handle her. So she felt as if just her presence in the world was just disgusting. And if she ever needed or asked for anything, it would cause this sort of self-betrayal. So these diseases can really tell us about what the psyche is dealing with, what the psyche is repressed. So I want you to find an illness, and again, it doesn't have to be something major like cancer or heart disease, but it is something that you probably repeatedly struggle with. Maybe you're someone who gets a lot of broken bones, maybe you get tendinitis, carpal tunnel, headaches, neck pain, earaches. Everything has a significance psychologically, and try to align it with the values. Is there something that you've heard continuously all the time that perhaps triggered the ear infection this last time? And then try to track it to when you last got the illness, when you got the symptom, so that you can start to try to make correlations between when you had the onset of it and what was said or what you heard or what you did, so you can start piecing it together. Remember, we practice on ourselves so that we feel more comfortable, doing these activities with clients. And then we'll work deeper on this throughout the month. Thank you.